Hi, I'm Alan Barnes. Welcome to another edition of Cadence Fishing TV, and today we're fishing the whip. Today we're on Lancashire's River Calder. It's a tributary of the River Ribble, and it's quite an interesting river in as much as, like many in the country, it's undergoing a massive resurgence. For many years, probably from the start of the Industrial Revolution, I'd imagine, it was heavily polluted because it rises on the Pennine Moors above Burnley and carried all of the waste and effluent from factories for many years and was basically devoid of fish for a long time. And it's a credit, I suppose, to the way that United Utilities and the Environment Agency have cleaned rivers up, that it's now in sparkling form. And if I'm honest with you, it's really one of Lancashire's hidden gems. It doesn't get much press coverage in the angling press, and yet as you can see here, it's absolutely solid with dace. I've been fishing for about an hour and a half, and if I look at my clicker, that's my 83rd fish of the day in an hour and a half. We're in a beautiful spot. We're in the village of Whalley in the Ribble Valley. Whalley, I suppose, is most famous for its monastery or abbey, which is just behind this peg. The monastery dates back to the 14th century. And having had a quick look on the internet last night just to do my homework, it would appear that the monks chose to build the abbey here because there was a weir, and that gave them access to the river to get water. As I mentioned at the start of this film, today we're fishing the whip. The peg I'm on is about 5 feet deep, and I'd describe it as just moderate walking pace. So beautiful, really. You can fish the stick and the waggler here, of course, but there's so many dace in this peg at the moment that we wanted to showcase the Cadence CP 200 whip, and we wanted to give viewers a chance to see how we fish with it, and hopefully for beginners to whip fishing, give them an insight into what is a deadly method and a very efficient means of catching fish quickly. The reason again why the whip is an important tool in any match angler's armoury is the fact that it does speed up your fishing somewhat. I'd imagine that a proficient whip angler is probably catching fish 30% faster than somebody fishing with a conventional rod and line approach, even a stick float off the rod end. So you can see that it is a very fast and efficient way of catching fish. I don't think I'd have caught 85 fish in this time in an hour and a half on the stick float. Maybe 50, something like that, maybe 60 at the most, but not 80. And that's because it's quicker to cast in with it, and obviously when you hook fish, as I've just done now again, it's a matter of lifting and swinging on these small dace, which are averaging probably about 6 or 7 to the pound. As we were saying, the whip's a very efficient method, but you've got to bear in mind that there are two major disadvantages of fishing it which spring to mind immediately. One is the distance from the bank that you can actually present a bait, because you're limited by the length of the whip. And the second key consideration is, what do you do if you start to encounter big fish? And then you're in the lap of the gods with a flick tip setup like this. I know some anglers like to elasticate the top section of a whip to give them the insurance factor should they hook a bonus fish, but I like fishing it with a flick tip. And on a peg like this today, where you can see, looking at the fish dimpling, it's absolutely black with dace, that nothing really is going to get much of a look in. They're going to grab the bait before anything else every time. But it's worth bearing that in mind. You've got two things to consider that may persuade you not to fish with a whip, and one is the distance you can fish from the bank, and the second one, or the question you've got to ask, is, are bonus fish like big chub going to put in an appearance, and am I prepared to risk losing them? But when you're on a peg with dace of swingable size, or roach for that matter, it is very hard to beat a whip. I'm using the Cadence CP200 whip today. This has been in the country now since about May or June this year. And I've got to say, having used a variety of different whips in the past, for my money, it's the most well-balanced whip for long fishing to hand that you can buy. I know that there are longer whips. This one measures up at a full length of 9 metres. Today I'm fishing at 7.5 metres. But what I like about it is that even at its full length of 9 metres, you can actually stand up in a river for 5 hours and fish with it to hand comfortably without fatigue. And that's because James Robbins, who designed it, has a fine appreciation of what's needed to create the perfect match whip. Basically, you need a couple of things. You need rigidity and power to handle bonus fish. You also need a good action with the whip to flick a light float out, and it needs to have that responsive action in the tip section to deal with fish ranging from an ounce up to maybe, you know, a couple of pounds. I know that James has caught chub well in excess of 1.5 pounds using it on the Y. He may even have caught a barbel. But yes, you need a few key factors to come together. You need the action, you need the power, and you need the forgiveness. But more importantly, if you're going to match fish with one at long distance at 9 metres for 5 hours, it needs to be balanced enough for you to actually fish with it at that range. In my opinion, some of the longer whips that are out there are unfishable beyond 8 metres unless you put them across your thigh and use it like a pole. So, for my money, the Cadence CP200 is the best whip that you can buy on the market at the moment. One of the key advantages of using a whip at a decent length like this at 7.5 metres to hand is that in essence it's effectively like using a long rod, like a 20-foot or 25-foot long rod, and it enables you to get the line behind the float and put the float through the peg perfectly. So you're achieving perfect presentation by getting that right angle between the flick tip and the back of the float as it progresses down the peg. And today the wind has been variable, but at times it has turned into a quite stiff downstream breeze, and I could not achieve this presentation even with a 20-foot rod that I'm achieving today with the whip. So there's another of the bonuses and one of the advantages of having a whip in your hold all. You know, it can transform a peg on a day depending on the weather and the wind direction. The other thing to mention is the tackle that we're using. And as I mentioned, I'm using a solid carbon flick tip. It's the one that came with the pole, and what I've done, I've actually cut it back quite severely so that there's about 14 inches of the flick tip left. I've probably cut about 1 foot off it. That's because I'm in the lucky position of owning top two flick tip kits for this pole. The other one that's in the bag I've left longer, and I've got a different type of connector on that. That's got a Stonfo type flick tip connector, whereas on this one for bagging I've actually wrapped line around the tip, 10-pound line, and threaded on a piece of black hydro to act as a sort of end piece and a shock absorber, and the 10-pound line comes off the end of the flick tip and connects to the rig, much in the way that you'd connect a pole rig to a Dacron connector with a lasso type arrangement loop. So here's a flick tip connector setup in close-up. As you can see, there's a 2-inch length of 10-pound line which is coming out of this piece of black hydro, and I've tied multiple knots in the end, trimmed it down and super glued that knot so that it can't unravel, and I'll attach the rig to this by lassoing the rig over the knot and pulling it down snug behind it. I'll show you that in a minute. But coming back up the flick tip, you'll see there's about 4 to 4.5 inches of flick tip which have the 10-pound line wrapped around them in a spiral, all the way to the rubber sleeving, and that stays in place by virtue of another shorter piece of black silicone sleeving, which is super glued onto the flick tip here, and the line is attached by simply lassoing it over the back and pulling it tight, and then wrapping it down the length of the flick tip and then through the center of the hydro and out the other end to the knot that you connect the rig to. Here I'll show you how I do it. There's the end of the rig. It's just a simple loop of about 2.5 inches with a smaller loop above it. I tie a figure of 8 to create those. You pull the line from the rig through the loop like so. So you've got the lasso effect, as you can see there. And then you simply get hold of the flick tip connector, pull it through the loop like so, and then carefully pull that down. It pulls down behind the knot, as you can see there, and that's it. You're in business, and you've got this super buffer, and the actual length of hydroelastic helps to kick the line away from the pole and stop wraparounds. The other thing you may have noticed on the whip is a piece of again old pole elastic, which I've knotted and put round the bottom section of the whip, and I can just use that as a keeper for the hook should I need to stop for any reason. And it's just a handy little thing to have on the pole, and it you know, it's better than trying to pull the pole all the way back to the bottom of the section where you're putting strain on the flick tip and you could break it or break the line and trash your rig, so you don't want to do that. Another lovely Calder days. There are two ways of casting a rig with a whip. I mean, you can swing it out underhand as I've just done, or you can actually bring it back and force it out overhead. But being perfectly honest, because I'm using an Olivet setup today. It's easy just to swing it out underhand and put it straight into the peg. It's not a difficult skill to master. If you can flick a stick float out and get it right, you can swing a rig out on a whip quite easily. In fact, if anything, it's a lot easier to swing a rig out on a whip, I would say. As we talked about, the presentation is superb with a whip, because you can get right behind the float and you can dictate how the float goes down through the peg. So here, just do it again and swing it out. We'll get that running down the peg. I mean, I've fed so much now that the dates are right at the top of the peg, so I've got a bite now, look. And there we go. We've hooked one. I'm feeding as I play it, or rather lift and swing it. And there it comes, straight to hand, another of those 3-ounce fish. Easy peasy. Right, I've just caught over 100 fish, so it's time to take a break and just talk to you a little bit about the rig that I'm using, the makeup of the rig, etc. So for starters, the float I've chosen today is a DH17 1.5 gram pattern. It's got a carbon stem, nice slim body up pattern, which is great for holding back against, and a lovely high vis bristle that, you know, the light goes through, so even in awkward light you can see these. They're a lovely float, behave very well. The main line is 0.14, which I think you need something robust enough to take the punishment of swinging fish constantly through the day. And as we come down, you see, I mean, I've actually come about a foot off the bottom now because the fish are topping in the peg. They're feeding very confidently. So here I've got a lock and slide Olivet that is about just under 1.5 grams, and I've slid it down to a number 11 shot there, just above the loop, to loop for the hook length. The hook length is 50 centimeters long, and it's 0.10 Silstar match team, which is very good line, which breaks at 2.9 pounds, so it's very strong. And again, it can withstand the punishment of swinging 3 and 4 ounce fish out all day. And on the hook length, I've got two number 11 dust shot, and I've got a distance of about 12 inches between the final dust shot and the hook. I've done that because the fish have come right up in the water, so I want the Olivet to get down and get the float to sit down properly. And then I've still got approximately 2 feet there of drop from the Olivet to the maggot, so that gives the fish time to pick it up as it drops down through the layers. And quite often I'm not even waiting for the float to go under. The float is lifting and holding up, and you can basically count to 5 and lift and there'll be a fish on. The hook is a Drennan carbon match, and it's a size 16. And again, you might think that's a big hook, but believe you me, when days are feeding in a frenzy like they are today, I could go bigger. I could go to a 12 if I wanted and still catch on a single maggot on a 12. It's a great hook. It's got a crystal bend of some type, nice wide gape, microbarb, a decent temper of wire that's strong enough to handle this sort of fishing all day long. And they're very good reliable hooks. You don't lose the point, and you'll see here that I always go well prepared. I keep them on a foam spool. You can see the detail on there. It tells you it's a carbon match, size 16 to 0.10 diameter Silstar, and it's 50 centimeters long, the hook length. You'll have to excuse my writing. And if you can see, there's quite a few left on there, so if I do need to change hooks in a match, I'm always well prepared. I don't have to be scrabbling about trying to tie a hook on the bank. They are there, they're ready prepared. So a whip's a very versatile tool, and just because I'm fishing today at 7.5 meters doesn't mean that it's a method for fishing at range. With whip fishing, you can start at 1 meter. You can fish a canal at 1 or 2 meters to hand and catch small fish with bread or with pinkies or with squats or with hem, whatever. And you know, the floats obviously vary in shape, pattern, size. I mean, here I've got some examples. These are both canal whip wagglers. That's got an olivet, and I'd use that when I was I used to use that float when I was bloodworm fishing on canals, and I needed to get the bait down fast for Tommy Ruff and Gudgeon. And you can see there's just a mere dimple of a yellow tip on it. The next one is a more conventional whip waggler, which has got the Drennan whip waggler attachment, which means there's no locking shot round the base of the float. And then down the rig itself, believe it or not, it would be shotted with a few small styles. The third rig here that I'm showing you is a homemade dibber. This is something that Kevin Ashurst really introduced me to. He used to fish at the Warwickshire Avon at Evesham and fish caster, tripping it through with this float virtually submerged. It was just a dimple on the surface, and Kevin used to call it his kidder float because you were basically kidding the fish onto the hook. So they're basic patterns of whip float, and then we come on to the type of thing I'm using today. And as I say, I'm using a DH17 pattern, and I've got several here, and they range from 1.5 grams up to I think that's 2.5 grams. This is a different pattern. This is a DH16, but it's a 6 gram rig, and obviously you can use them in deep water, more powerful water like on the Trent or on the Wye. And I've got other patterns with me in my carry-all. Again, some floats have a body up shape, some are more cylindrical shaped, and you just run that float at the fish. You can't hold back with it. The Sensus Alberto is a prime example of that type of pattern. But these again here are smaller whip floats, so when I might want to fish 4 meters or 5 meters to hand on a river, and you can see they're quite a bit lighter, but they've all got olivets, as you can see, to enable you to cast easily, to swing the rig out. So there we are. Being prepared is half the battle, and having duplicate rigs is an essential thing if you're a match angler, because if you do get a tangle and you trash a rig, you don't want to be spending 10 minutes looking for another rig to use. You want an identical rig that you can get straight out of the box, put it on and get back fishing quickly. These are the Sensus Alberto floats that I was talking about. You can see they've got a slim body up. You can essentially run them at the fish, but you can't hold them back. They'll lift out of the water. These patterns over here you can hold back harder because you've got a better pronounced shoulder, and again you can see the 2 gram patterns. And over here we've got some old Garbolino DS12s, which are aligned through the body. The line actually goes through the body and out the bottom here. And these again are great whip floats, and you can hold back really well with this body shape. And there again is one of those little kidder floats that I mentioned that Kevin put me onto. So there you are. There's a good range of floats available in the shops that you can go and buy. They all serve a purpose. They all have different body shapes for different styles of presentation. At the beginning of the video, you'll have seen me mixing my ground bait for today. I've opted to fish ground bait because I want to get the fish concentrated in the peg and try and catch them near the bottom. Dace are easy to catch and hook if you can catch them near the bottom instead of up in the water. So the mix today is comprised 4 elements really. Half a bag of Gross Gardens Noir, which is this bag here that's empty. A full bag of Gross Gardens Fine Mature, which is a brown ground bait in this case, but again it's excellent for roach and dace, and because of its fine nature it binds well, which is important when you want to make a sticky mix. I've also added a little bit of PV1, which again I think it's made out of coconut husk, copra, something like that, and that adds sugar and starch and binding power to the mix. And the other thing which I've used to bulk out the mix is a good 3 or 4 pints of molehill soil, and here I've just got what's left of one of the bags, unriddled molehill soil. As you'll see, I brought a very big riddle with me. That's bigger than a maggot sized riddle, but it's great for putting, you know, molehill soil through, because you get odd stones and bits and you can work them through this. So that was the mix. It's in here in the bucket, and I'm just about to top up my bucket that I keep on the side of the box, because we're going to start fishing again shortly. But that's how it came out, the mix. It's gone a bit dry, it just wants loosening up and mixing round, but you can see that it's full of attraction. It's got the continental ground bait in it, and it's got lots of molehill soil, and even now I can just squeeze it like that, and that will go down to the bottom and gradually break up. and it drags the fish in. Dace love ground bait. They also love hemp. So what I'm going to do now is just put some more in my bowl on that I have on the hoop by my side, and add the various things. I mean, if I just show you what I've got left here, you see there's casters, there's hemp, and there's dead pinkies in there, and that's a perfect combination when you're targeting chub, dace and roach on a river. So we'll just add a bit more. So I'll just pop that riddle over that bowl, get a couple of good handfuls, then put it back over my bucket so I don't lose any. Riddle it through, push the bigger bits through. And there we are. So now we're just going to add some hemp, a couple of good handfuls. Don't be shy because dace are greedy. Handful of casters. And my pinkies are down in here, I think. What I did with the pinkies, I just froze them overnight in my chest freezer, and you can see the dead. I mean, in fact, they're starting to come back to life. They really are quite a durable maggot. You can see them wriggling, but they've been in a chest freezer overnight. But they're still in a fairly dormant state, so they can go in. Just give it a mix. And we're ready to go and catch another 100 days. So let's crack on without further ado. So there's been nothing sophisticated about the hook bait today. Single bronze maggot has been a winner. Well, there we go, that's the best days today so far. Good 8 or 9 ounces there. Nice big cock days, and right in the pantry where all the bites are coming. The session's getting stronger and stronger. Since I added some additional ground bait to the bowl after I caught 100 fish, I've now comfortably caught another 50 fish in about an hour's fishing. And the beauty of the ground bait is that it's keeping the dace where I want them down the peg, so I can get to them. I'm getting bites as the float runs over the hot area, or the pantry as we call it, and it's reaping dividends. You know, the stamp's pretty good. It's still averaging 3 to 4 ounces of fish. And as I say, ground bait in conjunction with the whip has proved to be a very fast and efficient method today. I'll just throw a ball now and you can see it just behind the float, ease the float down, wait for a bite. Quite often the hold-ups, there we go, there's one now. We'll just swing it in. Another of those typical shoal days that are ravenous at this time of the year, and it's fantastic to see such healthy fish in such good nick, in such vast numbers in this river, which, like I say, was once extremely polluted. And you know, it's a credit to the people who've worked so hard to improve these rivers, and it's a credit to the club that control this length, Blackburn and Hyndburn Angling Club, because you know, you don't get much more comfortable than this, sitting on a platform and some stone steps behind you to walk down. There aren't many stretches of the Ribble or the Calder like this. As you can see, I've got the whip coming over my forearm and going back behind me under my armpit. And this is what we call the holding stance. It's how I'd hold the pole when I was baiting up, as I've just done. And then obviously there's a transition to swinging it out, where you just hold the whip in a conventional fashion and just gently flick the rig out underhand. And then I'm holding the pole, the whip I should say, across my thigh, and I'm ready, and there's one again, I'm in again. And I'm just using the power here in the thicker sections of the whip to lever and lift the fish up and swing it out, and the shock absorption qualities in the flick tip take care of the rest of it. Well, there's fish number 200. I've had a cracking session. I think it's time we called it a day. Well, there we are, 199 days and 1 chub right at the death. What a cracking day. Whip fishing, great method. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.